Hi, my lovelies. I miss all of you. I hope you guys are staying safe at home. All right, and I hope that you're keeping up with your work. And if you're watching this video, then that lets me know that you are keeping up with your work. So, way to be a scholar even when you are not at school. All right, so today what we're going to be doing is I will be reading two different stories to you. As you guys remember, we have been learning about fairy tales, fables, and folk tales. Well, today we're going to take a look at two different fairy tales, and you guys are actually going to then compare and contrast those two fairy tales. Now, I know the last couple weeks at school when we were doing this, what we did was we read two different versions of a fairy tale, right? So we read two different versions of the Three Little Pigs. We read two different versions of Cinderella, all right? But now what we're going to start doing is we are going to start comparing different fairy tales to themselves. So maybe both stories have a princess, but they have two different things that go on and two different plots and different characters. So I'm going to read two different stories to you today. And then at the end of me reading, you will be, excuse me. You know, I messed up just like I do in class sometimes, so excuse me. But after I'm done reading, then you guys will get the instructions on the assignment that you are to complete that will be due when you come back from school. All right? So, the first story we're going to read, if you remember when we went through our books, it's called The Gospel Cinderella. All right? And this is by Joyce Carol Thomas, illustrated by David Diaz. All right? So let's learn about the Gospel Cinderella. Once upon a time, Queen Mother Rhythm, leader of the great gospel choir, lived deep in the swamp with her beautiful baby daughter. In a voice as flavorful as licorice, she sang lullabies to her darling child. One day, right after Queen Mother Rhythm had sung her baby to sleep in her basket by the river, a hurricane came up out of nowhere. It knocked Queen Mother off her feet and swept the sleeping baby downstream, out of reach and out of sight. After the hurricane had blown over, Queen Mother Rhythm looked high and low, but she could not find her baby girl. She searched weeks and months, but still she never found her child. And through the years, when Queen Mother Rhythm led the great gospel choir in concert, her voice was always thick with sorrow and joy. Sorrow over the loss of her child, and joy over the blessed relief she found in the music. From a cup set before me, I sip sorrow each day. Every time I swallow, I find sorrow come to stay. Then flowers of joy I taste in my cup, easing my pain and lifting me up. It so happened that way on the other side of the swamp, Crooked foster mother lived in a ramshackle cottage with her twin baby girls, Henny and Minnie. After the hurricane, Crooked foster mother found a basket washed up on her shore. Inside the basket, there was a little baby covered with mud after being swept down along the swamp for days and days. But she was peaceful, cooing like a fine feathered songbird. I sure don't need another mouth to feed, Crooked foster mother said. But what I could use is another hand in the kitchen. She picked up the basket and carried the baby home. And seeing how you were as dirty as a cinder pile, I guess I'll call you Cinderella. Now, Crooked foster mother was so evil that even the sun was scared to rise when she was outside. And as the years passed, Henny and Minnie grew to be just as mean as their mama. The three of them made Cinderella do all the work around that old ramshackle cottage. They made her do the cleaning, the sewing, and the cooking. Every day, Cinderella had to make 10 sweet potato pies and 10 pots of collard greens, which Crooked foster mother and the twins ate all up. They never left Cinderella anything but the pot liquor from the greens. I don't know, with some cornbread, she might be all right. Cinderella never complained, though. She just went about her chores, cheerfully humming and happily singing, which made the twins and their mama even meaner. They hated to hear Cinderella sing because her voice just seemed to get stronger and truer as time went by. while all they could do was croak like swamp toads. Haters. Meanwhile, back on the other side of the swamp, Queen Mother Rhythm decided it was time to find a new lead singer for the great gospel choir. "I'm ready to retire," she told her piano-playing Prince of Music. "I'll find somebody to take your place, Queen Mother Rhythm," said the handsome prince. And the Prince of Music had his royal runners run up and down the swamp, sticking flyers on trees and hanging them on bushes. They ran to the east. They ran to the west. They ran to the north. They ran to the south. When Cinderella picked up one of the flyers announcing the audition, she longed to try out. She longed to be a darter of rhythm. But Crooked Foster Mother had other plans. "My 2 daughters got rhythm," Crooked Foster Mother announced, snatching the flyer out of Cinderella's hand. "Cinderella, you will teach them a song they can sing at the great gospel convention." Well, it was hard. Henny and Minnie had sour voices, and try as Cinderella might, they still sounded awful. After a whole day of listening to Henny and Minnie messing up the music and singing the notes lopsided, Crooked Foster Mother got so mad she chased Cinderella through the kitchen, knocking over pots and pans. She chased her right out the house, past the chicken coop, where poor Cinderella crouched, trembling in fear. Way after a while, Cinderella eased back into the house and tried to teach the twins again. They sounded a little better, so Crooked Foster Mother said, "All right, start packing. We're headed to the great gospel convention this first thing in the morning." Excuse me, a little water. She didn't even thank Cinderella. She just ordered her to make Henny and Minnie 2 beautiful dresses, even if she had to stay up all night, which Cinderella did, wishing all the time she could go to the great gospel convention and sing too. In the morning, after Crooked Foster Mother and the twins had left, Cinderella heard a woman's voice singing the most beautiful gospel music she'd ever heard. Cinderella was so overcome with yearning that she rose up and followed the voice through the swamp. She went right past the hungry crocodiles lying by the river and reached boldly but carefully around their smacking lips to pick wildflowers, for her hair. She followed the voice over a dangerous pit of quicksand, leaping up to collect swamp vines, when she braided into a lovely belt to wear around her waist. Cinderella, followed that voice, winding through the swamp until she reached the great gospel convention. But now she was so disguised by the plants and flowers she had found along the way and made into a costume that not even Crooked Foster Mother and the mean twins could recognize her. But Cinderella stayed at the edge of the crowd, just in case. Queen Mother Rhythm sang the opening number with such spirit that the rhythm rocked the trees. "We have called a great gospel convention. All these singers have come from miles around. When we hear that golden voice, we're sure to recognize the sound." There were all kinds of groups who sang. Choirs from the north, quartets from the east, trios from the west, and duets from the south. But still, after listening closely to every one of them, Queen Mother Rhythm would look at her Prince of Music, sitting playing the piano, and shake her head no. They did not have the voice she wanted. When it came their turn, Henny and Minnie sounded so terrible, they got booed by the crowd and ran back to their row, where they scrunched low in their seats. Crooked foster mother was so upset, she mumbled to herself, "Wait till I get a hold of that Cinderella. I'ma wring her neck." But Crooked foster mother wasn't the only one upset. Queen Mother Rhythm still hadn't found her new singer, and the convention was almost over. It was just about then that Cinderella got up enough nerve to sing. She started from way in the back of the audience and sang her way to the front. The prince followed her song on the piano, loving every note of her gospel voice. Cinderella's sound was so gentle and bold that people hushed and stood up and craned their necks to see the girl who enchanted them with a voice as sweet as licorice. Tears of joy rolled down Queen Mother Rhythm's cheeks as she listened to the beautiful voice sing the words she knew so well. She looked at the Prince of Music and nodded her head, yes. Never missing a beat, the prince gazed deep into Cinderella's eyes, and Cinderella felt her heart begin to soar along with the notes she was singing. The minute Cinderella finished her heavenly tune, the whole crowd went crazy, clapping and cheering. From a cup set before me, I sip sorrow each day. Every time I swallow, I find sorrow come to stay. Then flavors of joy I taste in my cup, easing my pain and lifting me up. But before Crooked Foster Mother and the twins could recognize her, Cinderella turned around and fled. She ran back through the swamp, back past the quicksand where she left the belt of vines, back past the crocodiles where she left the wildflowers, and back into the ramshackle cottage. "We heard her, but we lost her," said the prince to Queen Mother Rhythm back at the convention. "Now I must find her." Are you picking up on the similarities and differences? The very next day, the Prince of Music and his royal runners began to search all up and down the swamp. They went to the north. They went to the south. They went to the east. They went to the west. "Why don't we give up?" said the royal runners. "We'll never find her." But the Prince of Music said, "Let's keep going." And they pressed on, disturbing screech owls, wildcats, and resting raccoons. Finally, they came to Crooked Foster Mother's cottage. "We need to hear everybody in your house sing," the prince ordered. Crooked Foster Mother was evil, but she wasn't crazy enough to disobey gospel royalty. "Just a minute," she said to the prince. Then she hurried outside where Cinderella was cleaning the chicken coop and handed her a toothbrush. "Here, use this to paint the hen house, and don't come inside till you're finished." Back with the prince, Crooked Foster Mother lined up her two no-singing daughters. They sang so bad, they made the royal runners' ears ache. The prince sighed and headed for the door, but just as he was making his way toward the river, he thought he heard someone humming a familiar tune. He followed the sound until he found Cinderella behind the hen house. He stood quietly listening, and Cinderella's voice seemed to make everything around her sparkle with an enchanted light. "Finally, we have found our singer," the prince exclaimed, and the royal runners came running, with Crooked Foster Mother and the twins close behind. Crooked Foster Mother and the twins were so upset, they started squawking like mad hens. But the royal runners shushed them up, wanting to hear the perfect duet Cinderella and the prince were singing. It was a song of love. When the Prince of Music brought Cinderella back through the swamp, Queen Mother Rhythm listened again to the golden voice and knew deep in her heart that Cinderella was her long-lost child. "You are my own true daughter of rhythm," Queen Mother Rhythm sang out loud. Now that her sorrow had been wiped away, every word she spoke came out in sweet melody. And so Cinderella took her rightful place beside Queen Mother Rhythm and the Prince of Music, singing and leading the great gospel choir. And as all fairy tales say, they lived happily ever after. Wow, that was a wonderful version of Cinderella. I love that. I'm sure you picked up on lots of similarities and differences that it has with the original story. All right, but for this Venn diagram, remember, you're going to be comparing this book, The Gospel Cinderella, to our next book, Rapunzel. All right? This version is retold and illustrated by Rachel Isadora. So let's check out Rapunzel. Oh, wait till you see the art. It's beautiful. Once there was a man and a woman who longed to have a baby. Finally, their wish was granted, and the woman came to be with child. Look at that beautiful African art representing different African tribes. I love it. The colors, I love it. Next to their hut was a garden full of beautiful flowers and herbs. However, no one dared to go in it because it belonged to a wicked sorceress. One day, the wife saw fresh Rapunzel growing in the garden and had the greatest desire to eat some. With each passing day that she couldn't have any, her desire grew, and she became very ill. Her husband asked, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Oh," she answered, "if I do not get Rapunzel, I shall surely die." The man decided he must get some no matter what. So that evening he climbed into the garden and quickly grabbed some. The Rapunzel tasted so good that now the wife wanted even more. Once again, the husband climbed into the garden. And there, to his horror, stood the sorceress. "How dare you come into my garden and steal my Rapunzel? You will pay for this," she said. The husband begged for mercy and explained that his wife would die if she did not have any. "Well then, you can take the Rapunzel, but you must give me the child your wife will soon bring into the world," she told him. The man, in his terror, agreed. When the child was born, the sorceress appeared, named the little girl Rapunzel, and took her away. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun. We are all children under the sun. Those African and those with African roots. When Rapunzel turned 12, the sorceress locked her in a high tower that had neither a door nor stairs, but only a window at the very top. When the sorceress wanted to enter, she stood below and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel then wound her beautiful long hair around a hook and let it fall to the ground below so the sorceress could climb up. A few years later, a prince was riding by the tower when he heard a song so lovely he stopped to listen. He saw Rapunzel in the window and fell in love with her. He wanted to climb up but found no way to do so. The prince returned every day to hear Rapunzel's sweet song. One day he saw the sorceress approach the tower. He hid behind a tree to listen. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," she called out. He watched as the sorceress climbed up to the tiny window. The following day, the prince went to the tower and called as the sorceress had done. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The hair fell down and the prince climbed up. At first, Rapunzel was frightened, but then the prince spoke kindly and explained that his heart had been touched by her singing. Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked if she would take him for her husband, she said yes. They said their vows of marriage in the tower and agreed that the prince would visit every night, for the sorceress came by day. The sorceress did not find out about the prince's visits until one day Rapunzel said, "Please help me with my dress. It seems to grow tighter every day." "Why, you thankless girl," the sorceress cried, realizing that Rapunzel was with child. "I thought I had separated you from the world, but you have tricked me." She grabbed Rapunzel's hair and snip, snap, cut it off. Then she took poor Rapunzel into the wilderness, where she left her all alone. Haters. It's like that girl that cut Lexi's hair. Hater. The sorceress returned to the tower and tied the cut off hair to the hook of the window. When the prince came and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." She let down the hair. The prince climbed up, but instead of his beloved Rapunzel, he found the evil sorceress. "Aha! You have come for your dearest, but you will never see her again." The prince was so overcome with grief that he threw himself from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns he fell upon blinded his eyes. He wandered through the wilderness for years, eating nothing but roots and berries, weeping over the loss of his beloved wife. One day the prince heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar. He went toward it. As he approached, Rapunzel recognized him and threw her arms around his shoulders and wept. Her tears fell on his eyes, and he was no longer blind. The prince led Rapunzel and their twins to his kingdom, where they were received with great joy, and as all fairy tales say, lived happily ever after. The end. All right, so that concludes our reading of the Gospel Cinderella and Rapunzel. So what you are going to have to do now is get a blank piece of computer paper or some notebook paper or some poster board, whatever you have, and you are going to create yourself a Venn diagram. You are going to tell me 5 things about the story, the Gospel Cinderella. 5 things about that fairy tale that only happened in the story, the Gospel Cinderella. Then you're going to tell me 5 things about Rapunzel. What are 5 facts from the story using different story elements? What are the 5 facts that you could come up with about Rapunzel? Then in the center, where they cross, you're going to tell me 4 things that both stories shared. And yes, there are 4. There's actually way more than 4. So think about it. Think about who was in the story. What happened in the story? Where did the story take place? Why was the princess sad, or why was the princess happy? Think about the different story elements and use that to find your 5 Cinderella facts, your 5 Rapunzel facts, and then your 4 facts that both stories shared. And then also what you are going to do is you're going to list 4 examples, only 4, and there's way more than 4. 4 examples of figurative language that you saw. They can all come from Rapunzel. All 4 examples can come from the Gospel Cinderella. Or you could take a couple examples from both, because both stories had several examples, okay, of different figurative language. So similes, metaphors, onomatopoeia, hyperboles. What else is there? Idioms. All right. And if you can't remember what they all are, Google is your best friend while you're at home right now. So Google types of figurative language, look at the different types, refresh your memory, then dive back into this video, listen to the stories as many times as you need so that you can complete this assignment. All right. I love you guys. I miss you guys. All right. Please continue to stay safe. Do not take this lightly. All right? Do what you need to do so that you and your family stay protected. I love you. If any questions, please give me a call or you can email me. Well.